and welcome to Beyond the Book here on QCTV. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Marlene Moten Jansen, Director of Anoka County Library. Today on Beyond the Book, we have 4 local authors joining us here at the Rum River Library in Anoka. 3 authors are sharing their first published book, while another is a nationally recognized and award-winning author. We'll meet our first author right after this. Welcome to Beyond the Book with 4 of our local authors here on QCTV. I'd like to welcome our first guest today, author Kevin J. Ward, whose debut novel, The Seduction of Paradise, is about, I'm hearing, local fictionalized Anoka. Readers in the know might also recognize a few of the characters as real-life individuals. Thanks for joining us, Kevin.
Thank you, Marlene.
I know our viewers are really anxious to hear more about your book and the inspiration behind it. So, can you tell me, what's this I'm hearing about characters in the book?
Well, it's an interesting thing because I've lived in Anoka my whole life, or most of my life. I was very intrigued about this house, which was originally the Woodbury House, which is now the Mad Hatter. And so at some point in my life, I assumed I was going to write a mystery book about that, which I have done. So it is a fictional town called Paradise, but as you said in your intro, the people that know Anoka, when they read it, it's clearly Anoka. It has all the landmarks, it has the city hall, it has the rivers flowing through it. But I've changed some names so that it's not specifically thought of as Anoka. The characters, though, to your question, there are a few characters. I would say there are no characters that are specifically them in the book. There are several characters, though, who served as a backdrop for, as I was writing, to put some kind of life into the characters. It was easier to write about real people. So there are a few characters that are modeled after real people. But again, to be clear, if something good or bad happens to these people, that's not my statement about the real person or not. But some people have read it. A couple of characters in particular, the people identified them right away. Some were a little bit more subtle. So I think that's one of the fun things people have, is to try and understand who is who. And to be honest, most of the people in the book are not represented by a real person, but some are, and that's one of the things I think people have fun with.
So the characters are sort of an amalgamation of all of your experiences.
Correct. Most of them are, and like I say, there's a couple that are specific, again, not real people, but modeled after somebody I knew. But most of them are just an amalgamation, is that the word? Yes, that's correct.
All right. So can you tell me what motivated you to start writing? You had this Anoka in your mind, but yeah. What started you off on it?
Well, you know, it's funny. I think writing is kind of like athletics or anything else. Some people it's just a natural interest. Some people like to play sports, some people like to play music. And I've always wanted to write. And one of the things, and I don't know if I mentioned this when I was being interviewed by the newspaper a few months back, I actually wrote, technically speaking, my first book I wrote when I was 9 years old. I say technically speaking because it was like 4 pages of 9-year-old gibberish. But the point is, I had the interest at that level to write. So it's just always been something I've really wanted to do. As a little kid, I always read the Hardy Boys, and as I got older, you know, I love like Tom Clancy and Robert Ludlum and some of the big name mystery. So it was just something, it was a passion I had, and then tie that in with some of the local things in Anoka here, and in particular, the Woodbury House, now the Mad Hatter. It just all of a sudden came together, and I realized now's the time. So I put it together in a book.
I really enjoyed reading that book. So
Thank you.
Can you tell me, are you working on anything right now?
I actually am. I've been thinking of another book, actually for quite some time, and writing is a lot of work. Anybody who's written a novel will know that. So I've kind of put it in the background, but now since this one's been out there and I've done some book signings and it took some work and still taking some work to try and market this, but it's kind of got the juices flowing again. So just a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, I have started the next novel, and it's also going to be locally based, not necessarily in Anoka, but in Minneapolis. It will certainly have Anoka tie-ins. I've kind of thought that I don't know how many books I'll ever write, whether it's going to be just this 2 or 1,000, but my theme is going to be Minneapolis based, and there'll always be maybe at least a touch, if not a little bit more, of Anoka in the book. So anyway, long answer to your question is yes, I have started one now. I'm excited about it. I'm only about 2 chapters into it, but it's kind of fun again. It's been a while since I've done this, and I enjoy it.
So where are we going to find your book?
A lot of places, pretty much any place. It's on pretty much any place online. Obviously Amazon, Barnes & Noble's website. Most book-selling bookstores that have websites, it'll be on there. A good place to buy it is I have my own website, or a website for the Seduction of Paradise. You can buy it directly from there, and Tate is the publisher. You can go to the Tate website and get it. You can check it out here in the library.
I was going to say that. Yeah. We have copies here at the library as well. So thank you, Kevin Ward, for graciously agreeing to come to visit with us today here on QCTV. I know that our viewers can't wait to sleuth in and find out all about those characters in your book, in The Seduction of Paradise. Find a copy at your library or on the website. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to Beyond the Book with another one of our local authors. Brian Siddons, who now joins us, is the Andover author of The Voyagers, Discovery in Havenswood Valley, a story of 3 friends' annual summertime retreat up north and the deadly discovery that they make. In a plot twist of his own, Brian wrote the last chapter first. Tell me about that. Can you give me the story behind it?
I can. As ideas do, they pop into your head. And this one, I had an image that popped into my head, and it kind of brewed there for 2 or 3 years. And my neighbor and I years ago used to set up our houses for the Anoka Halloween contest. And so we got into that quite heavily, and then one year after taking it down, my son and I were finishing up, and the idea was in my head so strong, I just had to go inside and write that chapter, which ended up being the end of the book. So that was my starting point.
So you wrote the last chapter first, and then did you have to figure out how to start it in order to reach there? Or did you just work backwards through the chapters, or did you go back to the first and start?
I went to the very beginning and had to find my way.
All right, yeah. So that you created your pathway to that destination.
Correct. So
right.
I knew where I needed to be, I just had to figure out how to get there.
Okay, so that sounds like an adventuresome way to write a story. Can you tell me what the hardest part is of writing a book?
For me, and I think for a lot of people I've spoken with, it's the ability to make time on a consistent basis to sit down and write. I do a lot of running, and I have a schedule that I stick to when I'm training for an event, and so I try to use that same management with writing. Sometimes I would get off track and go months without writing because life would get in the way. But for me, the toughest part is just that consistency.
That discipline of sitting down and putting your thoughts
Correct.
and getting them in order. I know I saw one of your proof copies, and it just it so impressed me your system on how you pull that together.
Yeah, it takes a team. And now I realize why so many books have so many thank yous in them, because it takes so many people to help you get through it. And so I had a few people, my wife, a sister-in-law, my sister, and a father-in-law that were my first set of readers. And then it grew from there. And then a neighbor, Vicki, helped me at the very end to really dial it in and get through all that parts of it. So yeah, it does take, once you finish the book, that's kind of a new starting point, because then you're editing and critiquing and get everything.
So it's a different process all the way along.
Correct.
Yeah. So without giving any surprises away, tell me about the book.
Okay.
What's going on?
Well, like I said, as you had mentioned, I wrote the ending first and tried to do my own discovery with the book on how to get there. It involves 3 20-somethings that are the main characters, and then 3 older adults that they meet at their annual get-together at the cabin because of the paranormal adventure that happens their first night. So that gets them started. It builds their relationship, those 6 characters, and then of course there are a number of others that become involved in it, trying to figure out exactly what happened. And so I modeled that area from my visits to northern Minnesota and threw in some clues about certain spots that I like and people frequent. And I've had a few readers pick up on that, which has been fun.
So they get the story behind the story.
Correct, yeah.
All right. So would you say your book is more character-driven, more mystery, all of it together?
I'd say it's 50-50 character and mystery, and for me it's the foundation for the next book in the series.
Oh, so you're starting to write again?
Correct, yeah. So I've got 3 chapters done of the next book.
Really? Do your same 3 characters appear?
I guess we'll have to find out.
Oh no, it'll leave us hanging. So, if I were looking for your book, where would I find it? How would I get a hold of it?
Well, I'm part of the new venture of self-publishers, and so I have my own website, brianjamessiddons.com, and it tells about the book and some of the information, and then there's a click, of course, to link to ordering the book online.
So briansiddons.com.
Brian James Siddons.
Brian James Siddons. I'm sorry.
That's
so
okay.
we want to make sure that we get the website correct. Can you say that one more time again?
Sure. brianjamessiddons.com.
All right. Well, I know that we're going to be getting a copy shortly for the library. So I'm excited about being able to showcase your work here as well as on the web. It's been a real pleasure meeting with you today.
Thank you, Marlene.
I really appreciate the fact that you came on the show. So, The Voyageurs, Discovery in Ravenswood Valley. All right. So after this break, we'll be joined by 2 more local authors. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Beyond the Book and our visits with local authors here at the Run River Library, where we're joined by another local author, Gail Cowden. Cowden's book, Deception and Redemption, a Quay Thompson novel, opens with a gunshot in a research lab and then ends with a search for a murderer out on the Gunflint Trail, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it's on the Gunflint Trail.
So I'm really pleased that you can be here with us today. I've got some questions for you. I know that people who've been lucky enough to read your novel so far also have those questions.
Yes.
So can you please share with us today what motivated you to begin writing?
I have written all my life. I've written journals, I've written logs, I've taught writing in school. I love to write. And it's a form of leisurely activity for me. When I retired, I just had time. And so I wrote this novel over 10 years ago.
Really? 10
Yes,
years
10
ago?
years. And I wrote it, and I'd take it out and look at it and fix things and change things and then put it back on the shelf. And I also wrote another novel during that time, which is still sitting on the shelf. I wrote that with a friend, and that one is totally different than this one. It's a comedy about women my age. But this one was my first, and it was one that something just caught my eye when I was reading a newspaper one day, the Star Trib, and I saw this article about a protest group at a research lab, a PETA protest group. And I thought, that would make an interesting story. And that's how I gather my ideas. And so I just started to write. And that's how the book came about.
I was going to ask you your gestation for the idea. That was a fascinating beginning to the novel, for a shot to ring out in a publicity campaign, and nobody knew why it happened.
No one knew why. And as I write, I don't outline. I let the story go, and the story develops itself. So my characters were drawn from a number of people that you meet, you see, you know, and I just kind of put composites together and thought, well, this character would do this and this character would do that. And I have a wealth of places for research in our family about police work, because our son is a police officer in Joplin, a part-time police officer now because he's director of the police academy and teaches all about the laws that are applicable to police officers. And also my brother-in-law is a retired police officer from Mankato, and my son-in-law is a St. Paul police officer. So I had heard stories for many years. I also love novels that are detective mystery novels. So kind of have that in the back of my mind, and I had my resources, and I had the internet, and I could put things together and just develop my story as I went.
So when you did your research, you had both local sources, primary sources. You were also going to the internet, doing research there. What other types of research did you do? Did you, as an English teacher, you had a wealth of experience in writing dialogue and that type of thing.
I taught how to write dialogue, how to do put together stories, and how to start and end, and so I went to my background knowledge, and I said I've been blessed that I've had such a wealth of knowledge in my background, in my years in education, that have helped me put this together.
Well, can you tell me what you're working on right now?
I am working on the sequel to Deception and Redemption. I had not even really thought about doing a sequel. But a number of my readers had come to me and they'd said, but what happened to what's next? And I thought, well, I know in my mind what's next. I know what's going to happen down the road, so that's what I did.
So that was a logical next step for you.
Yes.
All right. So if I wanted to find your book, where can I find a copy of your book?
Well, it is available online. You can go to Amazon.com and you can get the paperback, or you can download the ebook. BarnesandNoble.com, same thing, paperback or download the ebook. And also you can go to bookstore.authorhouse.com, and that is the publisher, and they have books available there too. I have run out of hard copies myself.
Well, that's a wonderful testament to the popularity.
I've done a number of book signings and had a number of people, even I've mailed books out, I've shipped books out, so.
Well, As director of Anoka County Library, I can tell you that your books in our libraries are very popular.
That's wonderful.
And they're all checked out right now. So, but if you check with the library catalog, you can find some copies to put a hold on. So I'd like to thank you, Gail, for coming on the show. I can't wait until your next novel comes out. But until then, Gail Cowden, author of Deception and Redemption, a Quay Thompson novel. You can find a copy at your local library. She's given us some resources, so stay with us. And our next local author will be coming up soon.
Thank
you, Gail.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Behind the Book with local authors. We're at the Rum River Library with award-winning local author Brian Freeman. Season of Fear is the 9th novel that he has written. Readers are rewarded with the long-awaited return of Cab Bolton, one of the most distinctive detectives in local fiction. So I have some questions for you.
Sure.
Are you ready to tell us all?
Let's dig in.
All right. So can you please share with us what motivated you to start writing?
You know, I'm one of those writers that this is what I've wanted to do my whole life. So I've been writing since I was a kid. In fact, I had this wonderful 8th grade composition teacher, and she really recognized my love of writing. And she told me, when you come to my class, don't worry about the lesson plans, just sit there and write your stories. And that's what I did in her class. And after that class, I sat down that summer and started in on my first full-length novel. And I've been writing ever since. I got the bug and it never left.
That's fabulous. So that, where, as you talk about your 8th grade composition, where does the first book that you wrote, where does that fall within? Do you have a lot of other manuscripts sitting at home?
You know, I've actually got 5 novels sitting in my nightstand drawer that I wrote between I was, 13 and about 35. So I think it was James Michener who said you shouldn't even try to get published until you've written about 1 million words. And so I figured by that point I had to be getting pretty close.
Pretty close to the 1 million. So can you tell me, You've written all of these manuscripts, all of these novels, and what's the hardest part of writing for you?
You know, that's a great question, and people will sometimes say, I mean, gosh, you've got 9 novels out in the marketplace. Does it get easier as you get along, as you go along? And actually, from my perspective, I think it actually gets harder because I really like to feel that I'm sort of bringing something new with each new book, and I want the readers to read each book and say, well, that's the best one yet. So I think as a writer, you're always kind of putting more pressure on yourself, and you're raising standards with every single book. So I think it gets harder because you just become more demanding of yourself with each novel.
And then as I think about the character development in your novels, as you read them, the character doesn't stay static. They change, they evolve. And that must be sort of difficult, isn't it, thinking about?
It's difficult creatively, but it's also exciting too, because that's absolutely true. I mean, the characters evolve in a series from book to book, and the characters evolve in the course of each manuscript as well. And you have to listen to them. You may think as a writer that you know what direction they're going to take you, but you sort of have to listen to those characters as you're actually getting the words on paper, because they may take you in some very different directions that's really sort of where they should be going.
So that leads me to my next question. I know it might be like choosing your favorite child, but what's your favorite character in your books?
That's a tough one, but I guess I would have to go with Jonathan Stride. He's my Duluth police lieutenant, and you know, he's become a huge reader favorite, and he's just this wonderful northern Minnesotan character, and he's one of those people that kind of tucks his chin against the wind and keeps moving on, and so I just really like Stride's determination to find the truth. And you know, he's not a superhero, he's human, he makes mistakes, but I think that's why readers relate to him, and that's why I relate to him too.
As I was reading some of the Jonathan Stride novels, I His character so resonated from Minnesota. I thought, oh, I know people just like him. And I loved seeing his character evolve as well. He went through some hard times.
Yes, Stride's had a tough road sometimes.
Yeah.
But again, at the same time, that's, I think, one of the reasons that readers really relate to Stride is he's not that superhero figure. I mean, he goes through the same struggles that we all go through and hopefully keeps learning lessons with each new book.
So with each book, you're bringing both the psychological thriller of the mystery, but you're also bringing a lot of character development into it.
Yeah, my books are psychological thrillers, and I like to create drama that emerges out of the emotions and the secrets and the backgrounds of the characters. So that's really the kind of thriller I like to write.
Well, I like reading it. So what kind of research do you do for your writing? You talk a lot about police work. It seems pretty authentic to me. What kind of research do you do?
Sure. Well, one advantage is the more books you write, the more you have readers that have a lot of expertise in different fields. So I've been very fortunate that a lot of Duluth police officers have been very helpful, and one of the Minnesota county attorneys is a big fan, so he always helps out on some of the legal questions. And one of the other things I like to do with my books is really capture sort of a you are there feel, that you've been dropped down into the middle of every scene. And so part of the research is going out and scouting locations for the book, sort of the way a film director would, and just matching up just the right place for each of the chapters in the book. So where a chapter is taking place sort of enriches the drama.
I know after reading the book, I tried to imagine where in Canal Park is Jonathan Stride living. And I'll never look at Canal Park the same way again. So without giving any surprises away, you're publishing your 9th book. We don't have it here at the library yet, but I hope to get it soon. How would you describe your book?
Yeah, I like to write thrillers with a heart. I mean, I like to keep that keep that sense that you have to keep turning the pages to find out what happens next. One of my favorite emails was from a reader who said that she'd been reduced to taking illicit bathroom breaks at work to get into another chapter. But I also want the story to linger in your head after you're done, and for the characters to linger in your head, so that you sort of keep putting yourself in their shoes and asking, well, what would I have done if I were in those circumstances? So it's got all the twists and turns and thrills that you'd expect from suspense, but I also want it to kind of tug at your emotions as well.
Well, I know from your other novels, I've felt that emotion as well. So thank you, Brian Freeman, for joining us. It was an honor to have you on the show. Brian Freeman's latest book, Season of Fear. Be sure to check out all of his books at your local library, including a number of ebooks that we have available of your works.
Very good.
So we'll be right back. Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Book with local authors. If you'd like to find out more about the local authors we had on the show today, or more programs on QCTV, check out QCTV's Facebook page or visit www.qctv.org. For more connections to local authors, visit the Anoka County Library's Facebook page or website at www.anokacountylibrary.org. We'd like to thank all of our authors that we had on our show, and we urge you to pick up a book at your local library. I'm Marlene Moulton Jansen. Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Book, and we hope you find some good reads.